Hi everybody! Have you ever wondered about what makes a hero? You're not the only one. Today's Ancient and Medieval Adventures lesson is all about heroes and folklore. For most of human history, people have been telling stories about heroes and monsters. Humans love to tell stories, and some of us love to think about stories and what makes them so memorable. A man named Joseph Campbell, who was a professor, thought about stories so much that he wrote a book about what makes a hero and called it The Hero's Journey. First, I'll go through the steps of the hero's journey, and then once we've got that figured out, we'll take a couple of familiar stories and break them down so that you can see what I'm talking about. You are probably familiar with the Disney versions of both of these stories, but in fact both Aladdin and Hercules are based on mythological tales from the Middle East and ancient Greece. So let's take a deeper look at what makes these heroes heroes. Joseph Campbell wrote that the hero's journey is split into three main parts. The first portion of the hero's journey is called departure. This is the first part of the story where we meet our hero living in their normal life. Then something happens to our hero and they receive a call to adventure. This is what will set the journey in motion. The hero might not always be excited to go on their new adventure at first, but they often receive help from others. Sometimes this help comes in the form of a magical being. The next part of the departure of a hero's story might involve leaving their natural world behind and encountering their first danger or setback on their adventure. The middle part of the hero's journey is called initiation. This is usually the part of the hero's journey where most of the action happens. The hero encounters the most danger in this part of the story. The hero might have to face these challenges alone, but they often meet another mysterious character who pushes the hero further on their quest. If there is romance in the story, it will usually happen here as well. Finally, at the end of the initiation, the hero completes the goal that they set out to do in the beginning of the story. The final part of the story is usually the shortest, and it is called the return. In this last part of the adventure, the hero realizes how much they have changed, and at first they don't want to go back to their regular life. But then they realize that they are tired of adventure and want to take all that they have learned and return to normal, even though normal might look a bit different after all of their adventuring. Does all this sound a little bit crazy to you? You might be thinking, no way, heroes are always different, that's why they're heroes. Well, let's take a look at a couple of famous heroes to see if this crazy theory about heroes and their journeys checks out. To do this, we're going to look at Aladdin and Hercules. You probably know these guys from the Disney movies, but these stories are actually traditional myths from the Middle East and ancient Greece. First up is the departure part of the story, or the beginning. Aladdin begins his journey in his normal world of living on the streets. He receives the call to adventure when Jafar, the evil advisor to the Sultan, offers him anything his heart desires if he can retrieve the magic lamp from the Cave of Wonders. He then finds magical aid in the form of both the flying carpet as well as genie. Both of these magical creatures help guide Aladdin on the rest of his journey. When he leaves his old life behind and enters the Cave of Wonders, he realizes that his life has forever changed, but he can't let go of his old thieving ways that easily, and he encounters his first real danger as the cave collapses. The second part of the story, or initiation, is where most of the action happens. For Aladdin, this part of the story begins when he is trapped in the cave and comes up with a plan to escape the cave and marry Princess Jasmine. Disguised as Prince Ali, Aladdin wins over the heart of the princess, but continues to struggle against the evil Jafar. After many dangerous fights, Aladdin is able to defeat Jafar. Finally, Aladdin completes his goal by freeing Genie and marrying Princess Jasmine. The final part of the story is the happy ending. Although Aladdin has accomplished his goal, he is sad to see Genie leave, but is content to start a new life with the princess. Is it starting to make sense now? Or do you still think this theory seems like it can't be true? Let's think about Hercules and see if it works there too. In Hercules, the story begins with Hercules living with his parents in ancient Greece. When he discovers that he is actually the son of Zeus, the king of the gods, he sets out on a quest to prove himself. This is the normal beginnings and call to adventure. He then finds magical help in the form of the satyr, Phil. Hercules starts training with Phil as he wants to become strong enough to go on his quest. Once Hercules becomes strong enough, Phil guides him to his first real challenge when Hercules battles the river monster Nessus. The second part of the story, Initiation, is when Hercules goes through the rest of the trials that he needs to complete. Hercules also encounters Hades, god of the underworld, who pushes Hercules to become stronger than ever. During this part of the story, he also meets Meg and falls in love with her. He travels to the underworld to rescue Meg and becomes a full god. He completes his journey by becoming a true hero and completing his quest to prove himself. The return, or the final part of the story, is when Hercules and Meg are summoned to Mount Olympus, and Hercules is offered the chance to live there with the gods. Although this sounds tempting, Hercules ultimately decides to move back to Earth and start a new life with Meg. Even though he has changed throughout the course of his adventure, Hercules wants to return to a normal life. Now that you've seen how the hero's journey works, what other movies and stories can you think of that follow this pattern? Shrek, The Little Mermaid, Mulan, Pinocchio, Moana, and Tangled are a few examples of movies that have been made that take elements of traditional myths and legends and put them on the big screen. Brave is another great example of a hero following the steps of the traditional hero's journey. Unlike the other examples I've shown you, it doesn't follow one specific myth, but includes many different elements of traditional Celtic culture from medieval Scotland. Just like Aladdin and Hercules, it includes magic, adventure, action, and a happy ending. So even though people are still coming up with new characters with their own stories and adventures, we still like the same formula of the hero's journey that has been around for thousands of years. There was a lot of information in this lesson. The main points to take away are that humans have always loved storytelling, and just as long as there have been stories to tell, there have been stories about heroes and their fantastic adventures. These adventures often follow the same pattern of a three-part story, even though the characters and events might change. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out some of our storybooks to see if you can spot this pattern in more stories.